Oh man, what has Reggie Collects got me doing now? Friends, welcome back to the John's Comics with Kids YouTube channel. And a question that was posed by community member Reggie Collects. He wanted to know what makes a good comic book story. How do we define it? What are some of the attributes? What are the things that make a story great? And in particular, in the comic book form. He did a great video that I've linked down below that you should check out. And a lot of other community members have been chiming in. He kind of has done this call to action. And I love these kinds of things because it gets us talking about other than the speculation stuff, right? It gets us talking about comic book stories, our favorite reads, why they work, why they don't. For those that haven't followed my channel for very long, I have been doing a regular series with my friend Alec Whitewell Comics, and it's all been about new comic books, right? What's been coming out on the shelves weekly or monthly. And in that series that we've been doing for almost 7 years, we've really narrowed down some of the things that have worked and don't necessarily work, especially in the medium of comics. So I've broken it down into 5 categories, and I have a particular comic to share for each one of these categories that really, for me, are defining attributes. And in some ways, each of these is like a push and a pull, right? They have 2 sides to what we're talking about here. And I'm going to start off with writing and art. That is the beauty of the comic book form. We are blending written word with visuals, right? With this artistic talent. And the book that I'm going to share that I think blends it really well is Layla Starr, or The Many Deaths of Layla Starr by Ram V and Felipe Andrade. This book came out a few years ago, was on the top of everybody's lists. It won a ton of awards. It's an absolutely phenomenal book. If you haven't read it, from Boom Studios, you should check it out. Really, really great artwork. But what I like about the book, and what I think the book does really well, is it balances these 2 aspects, right? It gives us these wonderful speeches, these sort of long-winded diatribes about life, but then also lets the artwork breathe from time to time. And it's this curious balance, right, that I think is really tricky for some creators to accomplish. This is a visual medium. You have to let the art have its day and have its space, but at the same time, you want to have that poetic license to be able to give us insight into what characters are thinking and feeling. And so this delicate balance is really tricky to nail. And when someone does it right, like this duo for Many Deaths of Layla Starr, that's a book that you're going to remember. Not everybody can pull that off. And I think we have all read stories that might lean one or the other and might, too heavily over explain things with clunky wording, but I might also just do too heavy on the visuals and you feel like you read the whole book in a minute and it didn't really last for you very well, right? So it's that delicate balance that we're really talking about. Along the same lines, comic books, especially superhero and ongoing comic books, have to balance long form storytelling versus short form storytelling. And this is a really tricky thing as well. This means I can have a single comic be its own story, and I can also have them connect into a greater story. This is an area that I think currently, right now in comics, we are struggling. And a lot of books are either written just for a trade paperback, meaning there is no single issue joy anymore. It's all got to be part of a bigger connective thing. Or you have these very short stories that really don't connect to anything greater. And we reboot at a number one in another month, right? So finding that right balance between long and short form storytelling is tricky. And for that, I chose Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb's The Long Halloween. So this is a 13-issue story set over a year, each issue looking at a specific holiday where the holiday murderer, the criminal, is committing crimes in Gotham and Batman's trying to piece it all together. I like it because each issue can in some ways be its own story. It has its own focus, its own villain, its own drama, but the greater story, the bigger arc that's happening, that continues across the entire saga. And that makes for a very entertaining. As a Batman fan, this is really one of those iconic sagas, this great storyline. But individually, each issue does have something interesting to say about Gotham, about Batman, or about a particular villain. And I think that's what really makes, for me, this a bigger book and a better book than the average Batman story, where it might be a great trade read or it might be a great individual issue read. But is it both? And that's the tricky thing about the comic medium for sure. Next, another delicate balance is this: can characters have room to grow and evolve, but also stay true to the core of what made them great? And this is really tricky. And I think nowadays there's a real divide in comic book fandom. Can characters evolve? Can they grow? Can they change? Or do they have to be constantly the same character time and again so that anybody grabs that Batman book off the shelf? It's still Batman and there's nothing to worry about. I tend to lean heavily to the side of evolution. That's just my feelings about comic books. I love that the X-Men as a brand, as a group within Marvel, have had that opportunity. The Kitty Pryde or the Kate Pryde that we see currently in X-Men is not the character we saw when she first appeared. That's very different growth for that character. And you could say the same for Nightcrawler and Colossus and a lot of those characters. And I think that's why my example fits for this category. And it's Chris Claremont. And I grabbed my Omnibus Volume 1 for this because he is a guy who definitely likes to see his characters grow and change. And long form storytelling really means a lot to him in this book. And so character evolution is important, but he also never lets them stray from the core of who they are, right? Kitty Pryde has grown and evolved and matured, but she still has that personality that's true to who she is. This is really tricky, especially with characters that have been around as long as, say, Superman, where they really are still the same person they've always been. So, how do you tell a story where they grow and they go through something and they have learning that happens without letting that learning spread beyond those issues, right? This is a really tricky thing. Again, I prefer characters that grow and change. I don't mind stories that shake up that universe and really ask us to let that character breathe and change a little bit, as long as the other half of that coin is, I feel this is true to the essence of who that character is. So again, very tricky balance and something that is a hot topic, I think, currently in comics, because some people feel very strongly they want their characters to stay the same always. And I think I fall into the other group. I really do like seeing characters grow. I want to see them go through something that changes them and they come out a little different on the other side. Again, not drastic, but important, I think, to keeping readers interested in that story. Next, this is another hot button one. Comics need to use those classic comic character tropes, especially superhero comics, but they also need to push the boundaries of the medium. This is another big trick area, and I think the best writer nowadays to do that is Tom King. So I'm holding up the Mr. Miracle storyline he did. I could have held up his Vision, his current Wonder Woman, you name it. They all work. We're talking about books where, yeah, they have those familiar pieces that we would know and want from a Mr. Miracle book, but he's going to push the boundaries. He's going to go a little further. He's going to force that character to deal with things they haven't dealt with before and possibly force us to see that character in a different new light. That's important to me because otherwise story becomes stale. It becomes repetitive. It becomes bland. Like a lot of people tell me Amazing Spider-Man has been for the last, say, 10 years. I want characters to grow, change, and evolve. This includes allowing creators to push those boundaries. I know that can be frustrating and uncomfortable, especially if you love a character and you want them to stay the way they are. But what I've always loved and appreciated about Tom King is he really wants to push this medium further, push these characters further, and get a little deeper into their understanding of who they are. I don't think you can tell good stories without pushing boundaries. I don't think it's possible to tell a story and just walk the same lane that everybody has walked before you. You need to go further. And I think that's important. Otherwise, what is artwork but a bland retread? It's the 10th movie in a series that's getting way past its prime, right? Comic books can feel that way sometimes if creators aren't given freedom to tell their story. So that's important to me. Lastly, and probably most important, what makes a good comic book story is panel to panel storytelling. And this is something Alec and I talk about a ton. Can a writer and artist communicate together enough to be able to make that each panel matters and the gaps between panels matter? Do I need to show every little thing? Or can I allow for a little gap in time occurring between panels? Am I able to follow the action without forcing the reader to go back and say, wait, what happened? Did I miss something? And some duos, writer artist duos, struggle with this. And you'll feel like you have to reread pages regularly because it feels like pieces are missing, chunks are missing. It doesn't flow. There's no consistent, like smooth passage from one set of panels to the next. The example I'm sharing for this is one of my favorite reads from a couple of years ago. I'm talking about The Righteous Thirst for Vengeance. This is a Rick Remender and Andre Lima Araujo is the artist on this one. This book is wonderful. It's powerful. It's graphically violent. It's a very intense read. And I think it really does a great job of balancing these two pieces, right? And telling a story from panel to panel. The first issue is almost completely silent. It's really letting the story just sort of naturally happen over a few minutes. Other portions of the story skip around in time and cover a lot more. There's issues where it's a ton of dialogue and issues where it's almost completely bereft of dialogue. I think they really do use the ability to tell that story from one panel to the next in an incredible way. And that's, I think, the strength of this story and what grips you, pulls you in, and makes you feel like you can't wait for the next issue, the next page. And that fluidity that really functions well, it all happens here because of that duo communicating, writer artist, and that panel to panel fluidity. So there you go. Those are the things that I feel make a great comic book story. Let me know. Did I miss something? What do you feel like makes a great comic book story? Don't forget to check out Reggie's video and share out your own videos. If you make your own, we want to see and hear what you're creating. I want to say a little thank you to my channel members, obviously those people that help me keep the lights on over here. We got some new mutants homies. Definitely appreciate them in a big way. I also got my X-Men channel members. These folks are so awesome. My X-Men squad. There's almost not enough room to fit all these people on there. And then, of course, my new Comic Book Day coalition, these three homies doing so much, contributing so much to make this channel work. Very much appreciated. Thank you all for making that contribution to the channel. I appreciate it in a big way. I've got more videos coming all the time. I hope to catch you guys in a live stream soon. Thanks for coming by.